The morning light over Los Angeles cut through the glass towers like a blade, painting the skyline in silver. Inside one of those towers, high above the noise of traffic and ambition, Will Spencer sat at his desk in the Forrester Creations executive wing, staring at his reflection in the dark screen of his computer. It wasn't the numbers or the sketches that troubled him. It was the weight of expectation, the unspoken rivalry between the two worlds that had shaped his life. On one side, the legacy of silk and artistry, the world of the Forresters where creativity ruled. On the other, the empire of ink and steel, Spencer Publications, the monument of his father's iron will. He had thought he could balance both identities, the Forrester by heart, the Spencer by blood, but balance is a fragile thing when ambition begins to whisper. Bill Spencer had always been the force of nature in his life, a man carved out of drive and defiance. In recent months, Bill seemed unstoppable, fueled by victories that reminded Los Angeles why his name still inspired awe and fear in equal measure. Luna Nozawa's threat had been erased, his romantic life was rekindled, and Katie Logan, the only woman who had ever truly tamed him, had drifted back toward the warmth of his gravity. Each triumph added a spark to the fire that had once defined him. He wasn't just rebuilding, he was reclaiming. And as always with Bill Spencer, when one victory was secured, his eyes were already fixed on the next. That next conquest wasn't a competitor or a contract, it was family. He wanted the Spencers united, all under one roof, one banner, one empire. In his mind, the vision was simple and pure. Katie at his side again, while working alongside Liam, the legacy of Spencer Publications carried forward by the bloodline he trusted. To Bill, it wasn't control, it was destiny. But destiny is rarely simple, and blood has a way of resisting even the most persuasive arguments. For Will, Forrester Creations had become more than a job. It was identity, independence, proof that he could succeed without the shadow of his father dictating every step. When he first joined the company, Ridge Forrester had seen potential in him, a strategist's mind hidden behind a quiet, steady demeanor. Will had earned his promotions through late nights and long hours, proving himself through performance, not privilege. And somewhere between board meetings and fashion launches, he had found something unexpected: Electra Forrester. Electra was light to his restraint, passion to his logic. The granddaughter of Eric Forrester, she embodied the family's legacy in every line of her being, elegant, impulsive, visionary. When she entered a room, she carried the same authority as her grandfather's name, but her heart beat with rebellion. Forrester Creations had shaped her, but she dreamed of changing it, turning it into something bolder, younger, less predictable. Together, Will and Electra had become a quiet powerhouse inside the company, balancing each other perfectly. She drew the designs that challenged tradition. He structured the strategies that made them profitable. They had built something that felt both professional and deeply personal, a partnership that was as much emotional as it was creative. But Bill Spencer saw things differently. To him, Forrester Creations was not opportunity, it was a cage. He saw his son trapped in another man's vision, working to enrich a legacy that wasn't his own. Every report, every whisper from the corporate circuit that Will had been promoted only stoked the fire of Bill's conviction. "He belongs with me," Bill would say, pacing the floors of Spencer Publications.
"He's my son, my heir."
"He's not a Forrester." Katie, ever the bridge between the storm and the calm, had tried to soothe him. But even she couldn't deny the lure of returning to what once felt like home. Forrester Creations had been kind to her for a time, but lately, the cracks were showing: Ridge's arrogance, Brooke's endless maneuvering, the subtle sidelining that left Katie feeling peripheral in decisions she helped shape. Her loyalty had limits, and Forrester had tested them. When Bill approached her one evening over dinner, his tone was softer than usual, almost gentle. "It's time, Katie. Time for us to bring Will home. You know what it means for him, for us, for the company." Katie didn't answer immediately. She looked out the window, her reflection ghosted over the lights of the city. Part of her still distrusted the gravity of Bill Spencer. He was magnetic, yes, but dangerous. Loving him had always meant being drawn too close to the flame. Yet another part of her, the mother, the strategist, the realist, knew he wasn't wrong. Will's future at Spencer would be more secure, more powerful. But power often came at the cost of peace. Meanwhile, Will felt the pressure mounting. Ridge had begun hinting about expanding his responsibilities at Forrester, perhaps even grooming him for a future leadership role. Elektra was thriving beside him, her designs earning praise that even Hope Logan admired. The company was entering a new creative era, and he was part of it. Yet the more he accomplished, the louder Bill's voice became in his head. You're building someone else's dream, not your own. The tension came to a head one Friday afternoon when Will received an email from his father, an invitation to lunch, though invitation was never really Bill's style. It was a summons, and everyone in the Spencer orbit knew it. At the restaurant, Bill was already waiting, the picture of composed dominance, sharp suit, perfect tie, the kind of confidence that drew attention effortlessly. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. You've done good work at Forrester, he began, sipping his coffee. But let's be honest, you don't belong there. You're Spencer. Always have been. Will tried to deflect. Dad, I'm happy where I am. Forrester's given me a chance to grow. Bill cut him off with a raised hand. Grow into what? A glorified accountant for Ridge Forrester's ego? You think that man will ever let you outshine him? You're a tool to them, Will. Useful, replaceable, disposable. The words hit hard because, deep down, Will knew his father wasn't entirely wrong. Still, he hated being manipulated.
This isn't about them, Dad.
It's about me. About finding my own way. Bill leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. You can find your way under your own name, not as their employee. I'm offering you more than a job. I'm offering you legacy. Legacy. The word echoed between them like a challenge. When Will didn't respond, Bill shifted tactics. Think about your mother. You know how they've treated her at Forrester, sideways glances, token projects, barely acknowledging her voice. She deserves better. You both do. The conversation left Will unsettled. He knew his father was using emotion as a weapon, yet he couldn't deny the logic beneath it. Back at the office, Elektra immediately sensed his distraction. You saw him, she said softly, reading him too easily. Will hesitated. He wants me at Spencer. He says I'm wasting myself here. Elektra crossed her arms, her expression guarded. And what do you think? I think he's my father, Will said quietly. And that makes it complicated. Over the next week, Will found himself caught between worlds. At Forrester, he was celebrated. Brooke praised his diligence. Ridge trusted his instincts, and Elektra looked at him with a pride that steadied him. But at home, his phone buzzed constantly with messages from his father, reminders of opportunity, promises of empire. Katie, too, began to shift. One evening, she joined him for coffee and spoke carefully, as though testing fragile ground. Your father's right about one thing, she said. You could have more influence at Spencer. You could help shape something that's ours. That ours changed everything. It wasn't just Bill's plan anymore, it was Katie's, too. Elektra felt the shift before Will even spoke of it. He had grown quieter, more distant, his eyes drifting during meetings. One night after work, as they walked through the nearly empty design floor, she turned to him. You're leaving, aren't you? He froze. I haven't decided. Her voice softened, but the pain beneath it was sharp. You don't have to decide. I can see it in you. The way you talk about him, the way you defend him even when you know what he's doing. Elektra, no, she interrupted, her composure breaking. I get it. You're Spencer. That's in your blood. But you're also a man who's built something here, with me. Does that mean nothing? Her question lingered like smoke. That night, Will couldn't sleep. He walked the quiet halls of Forrester Creations, passing portraits of the family that had built the company. Eric's stern wisdom, Ridge's restless ambition, Steffi's bold vision. And somewhere among them, he saw himself, a man standing between legacies, belonging fully to neither. By the following Monday, the decision loomed. Bill had sent an official proposal, an executive role at Spencer Publications, equal partnership with Liam in leading the next generation of the company. It was everything Will had once imagined he wanted: power, respect, ownership. Yet as he stared at the offer, Electra's words echoed. Does that mean nothing? When he finally met her to talk, she didn't plead. She stood tall, her blue eyes calm but wounded. If you go, she said simply, go because it's your dream, not because it's his. He nodded, knowing she was right. Later that evening, in the gleaming office of Spencer Publications, Bill poured 2 glasses of bourbon. To the future, he said with satisfaction as Will signed the papers. Katie smiled faintly, her pride tempered by unease. Bill had won his family, his company, his narrative restored. Yet the look in Will's eyes wasn't triumph, it was uncertainty. At Forrester, Electra received the news in silence. The corridors felt emptier without him. When she entered the design room the next morning, his chair was already gone, his nameplate removed. She touched the smooth surface of the desk and whispered, "You made the wrong choice." But even as she said it, she didn't truly believe it was that simple. Choices in Los Angeles were never clean. They were carved from ambition and guilt, stitched together by love and pride. Weeks later, as Will settled into his new office at Spencer Publications, the city stretched before him like an empire waiting to be conquered. Yet in the quiet moments, when the lights dimmed and the noise of success faded, he caught himself glancing at the Forrester newsletter updates, Electra's new collection, the glowing reviews, the headlines praising her innovation. Each time, his chest tightened. He told himself it was just professional curiosity, but the truth lay deeper. He missed her, and he missed the man he had been when he worked beside her. At Forrester Creations, Electra buried herself in work. Her designs turned darker, bolder, more defiant. Every stitch carried emotion she refused to speak aloud. People called her vision revolutionary, but those close enough to look into her eyes saw something else, lost disguised as brilliance. Katie, meanwhile, tried to bridge the worlds once again. She visited Electra, offering words of understanding. "He didn't leave because of you," she said gently. "He left because he needed to know who he was." Electra smiled faintly. "Then I hope he finds it before it's too late." In the months that followed, the Spencers rose higher. The press called it a new golden age for Spencer Publications. Bill's empire was thriving, his family united in appearance, if not in spirit. But beneath the gleam of success, fault lines spread. Will's confidence faltered, Katie questioned whether peace built on persuasion could last, and Bill, ever the titan, began to sense that victories won through control often come with invisible costs. And somewhere in the city, under the neon hum of Los Angeles, Electra Forrester walked alone after another fashion gala, her gown brushing against the marble floor. Cameras flashed, but her smile never reached her eyes. The night wind carried the faint echo of her voice, steady, sad, and resolute. "We all inherit something," she whispered. "Some inherit empires. Some inherit the courage to walk away from them." The city of Los Angeles shimmered beneath the soft glow of a winter sun, the air heavy with perfume, anticipation, and the faint tension that always lingered before a Forrester event. Inside the glass halls of the Forrester mansion, the hum of preparation was steady and bright. Silk ribbons hung from the chandeliers, tables gleamed with crystal, and the air was alive with whispers of the wedding of the year. Hope Logan and Liam Spencer were to marry once again. The photographers waited like vultures for perfection. The guests rehearsed smiles polished by habit. On the surface, it was paradise reborn. Yet in another corner of this glittering city, the cracks of obsession began to widen into something far more dangerous. Sheila Carter sat alone in the quiet of her living room, her manicured nails digging into the arm of the chair as she stared at a glossy invitation that would never arrive. Her lips twisted into a brittle smile. She did not need to open an envelope to know what was happening. Hope was marrying Liam again, and the entire world was pretending she did not exist. Her husband, Deacon Sharp, had broken the news gently the night before, his voice strained, his hands trembling as if holding dynamite. He didn't want to tell her. She could see it in his eyes. But his silence had become unbearable. When she had spoken of the dress she planned to wear, of the possibility of sitting quietly at the back, he had sighed, heavy with defeat, and told her the truth. She wasn't invited. For a long moment, she had simply stared at him, her face a porcelain mask. Then the tremor began, small at first, then building until her entire body shook with the force of her fury. Not invited. The words pulsed in her head like an insult carved into her skin. How dare they decide who belonged and who didn't? She was Deacon's wife. She was part of that world whether they liked it or not. But Deacon, torn between loyalty and fear, had only begged her not to make a scene. She had watched him retreat from her rage with the helplessness of a man who knew that logic was useless against the storm rising inside her. When dawn came, Sheila was already at the hospital. Taylor Hayes's office door flew open before her secretary could even speak. "Sheila, you don't have an appointment," the woman protested weakly, but Sheila ignored her. She stormed inside, her eyes bright with the sheen of sleeplessness. Taylor looked up from her desk, startled but not surprised. There was always something about Sheila's energy that announced itself before she entered, a tension, a vibration that unsettled the air. "Sheila," Taylor began, carefully setting down her pen, "you can't just barge in here." But Sheila wasn't listening. Words tumbled out of her like shards of glass. She ranted about being excluded, about the hypocrisy of forgiveness that never extended to her. Taylor listened in silence at first, letting the wave of rage wash over the room. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm but firm. "You can't go to that wedding, Sheila. You know that." That single sentence ignited something. Sheila's pupils dilated, and her breath came faster. "Are you telling me I can't celebrate my husband's family? Are you saying I'm dangerous?" Taylor hesitated, which was answer enough. "Don't you dare say it," Sheila hissed. "Don't you dare call me crazy." The silence that followed was heavy, electric. Taylor knew this tone, the brittle calm that came before the explosion. She rose slowly, trying to defuse the moment. "Sheila, I'm not here to label you. I'm here to help you see." But Sheila cut her off with a low laugh that chilled the air. "Help me see? Oh, Taylor, you've always seen me as a case file, not a person. You sit there in your pretty little office pretending you can diagnose what you've never lived." Taylor's composure cracked, fear flickering behind her professional mask. She remembered the bullet Sheila had once put in her, the memory as vivid as the scar beneath her blouse. "You're not thinking clearly," she said, forcing her voice steady. "Deacon told you the truth because he cares. If you show up at that wedding, you'll destroy him and yourself." Sheila's voice softened, almost wistful. "Destroy myself? I did that a long time ago. The only thing left for me now is to remind them that I still exist." Then, with a suddenness that made Taylor flinch, Sheila turned and left. The door slammed, and Taylor sat back, shaken. She reached for her phone to warn Deacon, but her hands were trembling too badly to dial. Across town, the Logan house was bathed in laughter and perfume. Hope stood before a tall mirror surrounded by her mother, Brooke, and her aunts, Katie and Donna. Layers of ivory tulle cascaded around her like mist, and her reflection glowed with a fragile serenity. Brooke brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's face, her eyes wet with pride. "You look like the dream I once had," she whispered. Hope smiled, though beneath her composure, 1,000 emotions churned: relief, exhaustion, and the cautious hope that this time, maybe, forever would mean something real. Downstairs, Deacon adjusted his tie nervously. He was proud, so profoundly proud, but guilt weighed on him like a stone. He couldn't shake the image of Sheila's face when he had told her the truth. The memory followed him like a ghost, threatening to sour the sweetness of this day. He knew her too well to think the matter was over. Sheila never accepted rejection quietly. At the chapel, the guests began to arrive. Bill Spencer leaned against a pew with a practiced smirk, pretending indifference. Brooke exchanged polite pleasantries, keeping one eye on the door. Ridge and Eric were absent, citing personal matters, though everyone suspected their ongoing feud had made attendance too awkward. The Logan women shone in pastel hues. Their laughter floated like bubbles of champagne. Outside, the air shimmered with warmth, but somewhere in the distance, storm clouds gathered. Metaphorical perhaps, but heavy all the same. Beth, the youngest of the Logan Spencer clan, practiced her lines as the officiant, her small hands clutching the cue cards. Her brother Douglas beamed beside her, proud to see his mother's joy restored. The innocence of the children filled the room with a purity that even cynics couldn't resist. When Hope finally appeared at the top of the aisle, the audience rose. Music swelled. A familiar tune played too many times in this family's history, but no less stirring for it. Liam's eyes softened as he watched her approach, every step a promise that maybe the ghosts of their past had finally learned to sleep. Deacon's voice trembled slightly as he led her forward, his heart swelling with paternal pride. For a brief moment, he forgot the chaos that had shadowed his life. In this instant, he was just a father giving away his daughter, the one thing he had done right. The ceremony unfolded with practiced grace. Bill and Brooke offered heartfelt speeches, and when Hope and Liam exchanged vows, their words carried the weight of every heartbreak they had survived. Rings were slipped onto fingers, tears were shed, and applause erupted as they were pronounced husband and wife once again. It should have been perfect. Meanwhile, at Taylor's office, the air was thick with unease. Hours had passed, but Taylor couldn't shake the dread curling in her stomach. She replayed every word of their encounter, every flicker in Sheila's eyes. When Deacon arrived for his therapy session, she didn't bother with small talk. "You need to go home," she said urgently.
Now.
Deacon frowned. "What happened?" "She came to see me this morning." "She's furious, Deacon. I don't think she's going to let this go." He ran a hand through his hair, panic rising. "You don't think she'd actually—" Taylor didn't answer, and that silence told him everything. He stood abruptly, grabbed his coat, and rushed for the door. Back at the reception, laughter echoed beneath chandeliers. Children danced between tables, and champagne flowed like liquid sunlight. Brooke toasted the couple, her voice trembling with genuine happiness. Hope and Liam shared a kiss that drew applause. Even Bill, cynical as ever, managed a grin. It was, for one fleeting hour, the picture of contentment. Then came the shadow. Outside the venue, a figure lingered near the entrance, hidden behind the manicured hedges. Sheila Carter watched through the glass, her eyes wide and glistening. She had told herself she wasn't here to cause trouble, only to catch a glimpse, to feel part of something she would never truly belong to. But as she watched Deacon laugh, his hand resting proudly on Hope's shoulder, a wave of loneliness crashed over her so violently she nearly staggered. She pressed a hand against the glass, her breath fogging the pain. This was her family too, or at least it should have been. She had tried so hard to change, to tame the chaos inside her. But every act of forgiveness from others felt like pity, and every closed door reopened the wounds of rejection. Inside, Deacon suddenly stiffened. A shiver crawled down his spine. He turned toward the window instinctively, though the glare of lights concealed her figure. "Sheila," he whispered under his breath, but the noise of celebration drowned his voice. At that exact moment, Taylor arrived, breathless and pale. She found him near the back of the hall, her words tumbling out in a rush. "She's here, isn't she?" Deacon's face drained of color. Together they scanned the crowd, but Sheila was already gone. She had walked away, disappearing into the night like a phantom. Her heart pounded, her mind a storm of humiliation and defiance. She had told herself she wouldn't ruin Hope's day, and for once, she had kept that promise. Yet the restraint cost her dearly. By the time she reached home, she was trembling again, not from rage, but from emptiness. She poured a glass of wine, her reflection in the dark window almost unrecognizable. "They'll never forgive me," she murmured. "They'll never see me as more than what I was." Tears welled, but did not fall. She had learned long ago that weakness was a luxury she couldn't afford. The next morning, Deacon found her sitting exactly where he'd left her the day before, still in her wedding day dress, the fabric wrinkled and stained. He knelt before her, his voice hoarse. "You did the right thing by staying away." Her lips curled into a bitter smile. "Did I? Because it feels like dying quietly." Deacon had no answer. In the days that followed, Hope and Liam's life settled into a fragile calm. The headlines called their wedding the renewal of true love, but inside the Forrester circle, old tensions simmered. Ridge and Eric's feud resurfaced, Taylor battled sleepless nights, and Deacon, despite his joy for his daughter, found himself haunted by guilt. Meanwhile, Sheila's instability deepened. She oscillated between moments of eerie serenity and sudden, violent anger. She tore through photo albums, alternately kissing and ripping the pictures of those she loved. Her mind replayed Taylor's words, "Don't go there, you'll destroy him," until they twisted into mockery. In a rare moment of lucidity, she returned to Taylor's office, this time unannounced but quiet. Taylor's heart leapt when she saw her. "Sheila, you came back," she said softly. Sheila nodded, her voice subdued. "I wanted to prove you wrong. I didn't go. I stayed home. I didn't destroy anyone." Taylor's eyes softened. "That's progress." But Sheila's next words shattered the fragile peace. "So, why does it feel like no one noticed?" That question, simple, devastating, hung in the air between them. For all her crimes, all her chaos, Sheila's tragedy had always been the same. She wanted to be loved, but only knew how to be feared. As she left Taylor's office for the final time, her reflection caught in the hallway mirror, a woman dressed in black, beautiful and broken. For a fleeting moment, she imagined walking into that wedding, being embraced instead of rejected. But the fantasy dissolved, leaving only the echo of what might have been. Back at Forrester Creations, the family's dramas continued, as they always did. Hope and Liam began their new chapter, radiant yet wary. Eric contemplated retirement with quiet dignity. Ridge wrestled with guilt over the past. But in the periphery of their glittering world, Sheila's shadow lingered, a reminder that redemption, once denied, never truly dies. In the end, the week that began with love ended with loneliness. The chapel lights dimmed, the flowers wilted, and the champagne glasses were cleared away. Yet somewhere in Los Angeles, a woman who had tried and failed to change whispered into the darkness, "I only wanted to be invited." Her words vanished into the night, unheard, like a prayer from a soul no one believed deserved saving. And thus, the bold and the beautiful continued, its eternal rhythm of love and madness, where weddings turn to reckonings, and forgiveness is always one heartbeat too late.